Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum, dear viewers. I hope you are doing well. Today I am going to discuss about an important topic with respect to Federal Public Service Commission exams. So, dear viewers, if you like my video, please subscribe my channel and must press the bell icon so you will receive the latest update related to my upcoming lectures. Especially I am going to upload some important topics related to Federal Public Service Commission exams, so it will be fruitful for you people. So today's topic is the multilateral environmental agreements. So I will tell you about some basics of multilateral environmental agreements, some historical background, and some types of multilateral environmental agreements. So multilateral environmental agreements are those agreements that are legally binding between two or more countries, containing certain kind of commitments to meet specific environmental related objectives. These are legally binding agreements between two or more countries specific to environment related objectives or environmental related issues between two or more countries. If we talk about some history of the multilateral environmental agreements, so these are in place for about more than 100 years, and most have been developed in last 3 decades even, and especially since the 1972 International Stockholm Conference on Human Environment. From this important landmark that was held in Sweden in 1972 in Stockholm, Sweden. From there, these have been started in a formal way. Some studies conservatively estimate that approximately 700 multilateral environmental agreements are currently in place, according to some study estimates. Okay, so now we will discuss about some types of multilateral environmental agreements. I will discuss here only 4 basic types here. Number 1 is global or multilateral. Global or multilateral agreements are those agreements which are almost signed by almost all states of the world except few of them. They are almost all countries are signatory, or they have ratified or accepted these agreements except few of them. For example, Convention on Biological Diversity and United Nations Convention to combat desertification. These are 2 examples of global or multilateral environmental agreements. These 2 conventions are ratified or signed by almost all states of the world except few of them. Number 2 type of multilateral environmental agreements is bilateral. Bilateral indicates these agreements are between 2 or more countries, between 2 countries concerning an aspect of environmental management between 2 countries. For example, Treaty on Argentina and Chile on Environment in 1991. This is an example of bilateral because this was agreed between 2 countries, only Chile and Argentina. Similarly, many other agreements or treaties or agreements have been signed by other different countries between 2 countries. Those are called bilateral, multilateral environmental agreements. Okay, so now come to the type 3 of multilateral environmental agreements. These are regional multilateral agreements. These are those agreements which are specific to a certain geographical region. Okay, they have some specific geographical area between those countries. Those are regional multilateral agreements. For example, Bamako Convention. This is an example of regional multilateral environmental agreements. This was done between African countries for the ban and import of hazardous waste and control of transboundary movement and management of these hazardous waste within African countries, because mostly African countries have same geographical region. That's why these have been signed within those geographical areas within African countries. For example, in case of Bamako Convention, which was signed within Africa, within the same region, within the same geographical area. So that's why these are called regional multilateral environmental agreements. Okay, so the next type of agreement is the framework multilateral environmental agreements. What are these? Framework multilateral environmental agreements or those agreements that require further agreements. For example, protocols or other conventions to provide necessary standards, procedures and other requirements to implement those multilateral environmental agreements. For example, I will tell you an example. United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. This is about or related to the climate change. For example, it need further support of other protocols. For example, Kyoto Protocol, this was also related to the climate change, and Paris Agreement, like this. These two protocols and agreements provide support to this United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change. These both support to this framework convention. This type of convention are called framework multilateral environmental agreement. Okay, now come to the last type of multilateral environmental agreement, that is Appendix Driven Multilateral Environmental Agreement. These are those agreements which totally rely on appendices for their operation. Okay, totally dependent on appendices for their operation. Examples of these multilateral environmental agreements are CITES, Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, and Convention on Migratory Species. These are two examples of appendix driven multilateral environmental agreements. Okay, so now we will further explain how appendix driven multilateral environmental agreements. Appendix 1 of CITES, for example, these include species under threat of extinction, and so international trade in these species is permitted only in certain circumstances or exceptional circumstances. Trade are permitted for this convention is Appendix 1 of CITES. Okay, now Appendix 2 of CITES, these include species not necessarily threatened by extinction and but whose trade must be controlled. For example, in Appendix 1, trade is allowed in certain circumstances, but in Appendix 2, trade is not species not necessarily threatened by extinction, but trade must be controlled. Why controlled? In order to avoid utilization incompatible with their survival. Okay, now Appendix 3 of CITES. Appendix 3 of CITES includes species protected in at least one state. Okay, protected species in at least one state and which has requested other CITES parties. The parties that are signatory to Convention on International Trade in Endangered Species, they ask for assistance, they ask for help in controlling the trade. These are appendix driven multilateral environmental agreements because they purely rely on appendices. That's why these are called appendix related multilateral environmental agreements. So dear viewers, these are some basic types of multilateral environmental agreements. I hope you will be able to know about the basics of multilateral environmental agreements, some background history, and its some types of multilateral environmental agreements. I hope it will be fruitful for you people. If you like this video, if this video is fruitful for you, please subscribe my channel and must push bell icon so you will receive the latest updates related to my upcoming videos. Thank you for watching.